while 80% of POCs are successful, which is a great statistic, proof of concept, early development, only 20% of those POCs successfully make it to full-scale, commercially viable solution or product. So that's an awful lot of investment and not so much ROI. And as I mentioned, we've been talking about change really through all of the sessions today, whether it's transformation officer, resilience officer. But today's panel is really going to give you some actionable insights on how to drive successful change within your organizations. So I'm very happy to be joined by our experts who have done just that with success, driving more revenue, more profit, bringing new product to market, and ultimately driving business value not only for their employees, but for their shareholders. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, Michael, I'll start with you. If you guys would just spend a moment introducing yourself and what keeps you busy all day.
Sure. Well, I work for Wells Fargo. I'm part of our CTO organization. I'm responsible for all of our traditional infrastructure. That's everything from mainframes to compute, storage. Also responsible for things like the data center facilities, middleware, database, basically everything you might want to be able to run an application internal to your business, we're responsible for. To give you a sense of some of the scale, we've got about 50,000 physical servers, about 170,000 virtual machines. We're spread all over the world, primarily here in the U.S., of course, as Wells Fargo. We've got about 8 data centers around the country, and we're working a pretty massive transformation on that infrastructure right now.
Something about cloud.
Yeah, turns out we're interested in cloud. So we've got a pretty significant investment right now, and we have a team dedicated to helping us build out cloud with Google and with Azure. We do that both. I don't know if that was me.
That was not you.
Okay. We do that both with private and public cloud. So inside of our data centers, we have Google and Azure available, but also obviously in the public cloud as well. It's about 4,700 applications. We think it's a 10 to 15-year journey to be able to modernize the full stack of applications and get those out into a cloud format. And then we backstop all of that with our infrastructure as a service that we intend to operate in the cloud model.
Thank you. Shadman.
Sure. And Michael, that noise was, I think, AWS saying why they weren't in the list, but that's okay. I won't let you answer that.
We're contrarians.
That's the way. Well, I'm Shadman Zafar, and I know this is right after lunch, by the way, so I think we were told to figure out a way to keep everybody awake or wake you guys up. So I think panel decided to do a little dance routine.
Oh, we did?
No? Okay.
I missed that.
Never mind. We're skipping that. So I'm a CIO for Citibank. We run our global technology for our consumer business and our wealth business. Citibank, I think lovingly we call it the United States' most global bank. So we operate in 160 countries. We're a very globally focused bank. At least in the U.S., probably more so as consumer. You guys see us from a credit card business perspective. We have around 200 million credit card customers around the world. And just like as Michael, my friend, was talking about here, we are heavily focused, obviously, on some of the technology changes, including cloud, AI, and others. But more important than anything else, in my role, both as a CIO, but also as probably throughout the session, we are hearing multiple times, CIOs typically are now also CDOs. I do also run, so D in case of Citi stands both for digital, but also for design. So we run sort of a design agency for the company for product design, all of that. So I worry about customer behavior, consumer behavior, design of the products that end customers lose in their hands on a daily basis.
Great, thanks.
Hi, everybody. Most of you met me earlier. Tom Peck, Chief Information and Digital Officer at Sysco. I'll be real brief. Largest food distribution company on the globe. We do everything from high-end steak and seafood and produce to national chains, boutique restaurants, fast food. Heard a little bit this morning about the volume of trucks, and I'm looking out the window. We need some boats to deliver food as well. But we're going through a transformation. You heard a little bit about it this morning. We'll talk a little bit more this afternoon as well. But trying to reinvent what's a three-tiered distribution company. So we take the food from the manufacturer. Think of, farmers, Tyson Foods, whoever it might be. We get it to our customers, which could be restaurants, hotels, college cafeterias, any place that's food away from home, who ultimately serves it to end customers like yourself. So turn that into a consumer-like, digital savvy, self-service company is what we're really driving the change on. I have responsibility for anything and everything technology, cybersecurity, and e-commerce.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Platzman. I'm Managing Director at Strongbow Consulting Group. So for those who don't know much about Strongbow, we're a strategic advisory firm, and we help large enterprise customers, like the ones on this panel, modernize their infrastructure and drive change programs at scale. So very topical. As part of my role as engagement strategy lead, I spend a lot of time with customers, hearing about their challenges, their objectives, and regardless of where they are in the change cycle, whether they're in the strategy phase or the design phase or the execution phase, there are challenges that arise and risks that arise, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you all. If there's complexity and scale, you guys manage it. So I think that's great context. I want to start with some simple question, and it's this term digital transformation or transformation. We used it early in our marketing, and it became confusing. So we went to modernization. But I wonder, is transformation a thing? Is it an outcome, an end state, or is it more becoming just a natural state of evolution with focus on purpose and steps along the way? So just a quick level set on this word that we all use. What does it mean? Tom, I'm going to start with you because I think you have an opinion.
Sure. I hinted at my opinion earlier. I said transformation's a little bit overused, a little bit overhyped. I always enjoy when I hear people say, well, we're doing this big transformation, which implies, well, what were you not doing, or what were you doing earlier? I think this morning I alluded to there's a newfound sense of urgency. And coincidentally, I have a discussion with my peers, the CEO direct reports this week, and we're talking about modernization and how that's different. And modernization for us is things like technical debt, getting rid of that, and being innovative and making wise technology decisions so that you can be transformative in how you rerun the business. So I think they're related terms. Resiliency and modernization enable innovation, enable speed of transformation. But I think the term transformation, that's what our job is. Those are table stakes these days. And the big emphasis now is not that you're doing or not doing transformation, it's the speed at which you're getting things done.
Yeah, it seems to me that transformation is the convergence of business and technology. Maybe modernization is focused on technology,
Right.
But transformation is really about the business and how it interacts with the world. So,
Yep.
Shadman, you think about your clients all day, and you have, they're responsible for technology, but client-driven purpose. Can you share just a little bit more about what that's like in the context of transformation and changing business models?
So what transformation means in that mindset?
Or just,
So-
from a client-driven perspective.
First of all, I really agree with Tom's mindset that we have been doing transformation all the time. I think of transformation as more, it's not technology, it's not business, it's a state of organizational behavior. That's how we think about it. And it's not a targeted state. It is in a state where, as an organizational behavior, but the organization thinks about BAU is a bad word. You don't use that term. And there's a sense of nimbleness in the organization, and there's a sense that we are continuously changing. A continuous improvement is in place. So we do not have a target state, but we have a state that we are constantly striving to make an improvement based on continuous assessment of the market, of the consumer behavior, and what we can do. Markets, sciences, and art, what's possible, what is actually doable in the marketplace, and what's feasible to do. Once the organizational behavior reaches that sort of nimble mindset of immediately change, and change is the state, as you said at the beginning, Heraclitus said that, change is the only constant. I think when the organizational behavior gets to a point where it's continuously happening, that's transformation. And in the process, we are constantly, there's some technology transformation happening, some business transformation happening. That's how we like to think about
It
it.
just keeps going. So we've been talking about culture and organizational change quite a bit at a technology conference, which is telling, but you just described some of the changes happening at Citi. What's the timeline roughly to accomplish the change that you just described, building that organizational?
Of what I was just saying right now.
Is it years? Is it months? It just seems like something that can't happen overnight, so I'm curious.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, first of all, again, there's not a target state for a very important reason, right? That it is the state of organizational state. I think we are in the process of, we have been changing all the time. This organizational behavior change is something we have sort of put ourselves as a target, that in the next couple of years, we want organization to feel continuously in a nimble state. Now, we do feel a lot of this is behind us, and a lot of it, even 2 years from now on, will continue on. So when you say what's the timeline, I hesitate to answer in the following sense, that tends to put a sense of a target
Like
state.
it's done, yeah.
Like a done. And that, I think, so is the exact opposite of what a transformation needs to be, that it is not done. However, if I were to put something on it, it would be these two things I talked about. The BAU is a bad word in the organization, so it's a cultural change, right? And the nimbleness is not, when a change happens, it's not taken in the organization like, oh my God, I had this plan and I got to change that. Instead, they would take it as like, that is the standard way of operating. We had this plan, and we had new risk emerged, and we now need to adjust to that, and that's how we operate. When the organization comfortably feels that as a day-to-day activity, well, then we feel like that's the state we want to be for a long term.
Makes sense. And Michael, you described a little bit about the massive technology change that Wells is going through. And yet when I asked you, what's the secret to success? Culture came up. So right back to kind of building the foundation, not unlike what Shadman's describing. Can you say a little bit about your experience within Wells and building cultural change, whether it's within your team or more broadly, to support this change?
Yeah, Wells Fargo is an interesting environment company that I think about 160 years old. Started off with the stagecoach business, right? And I'm pretty sure to this day, if you pull up your mobile app and you happen to be a customer of Wells Fargo and you're looking at your balance and your checking or savings account, you probably want to make sure that money's there. You want to make sure that it's always available to you. Every time you put that card in the ATM slot, it pays off. And so when you think about it in that context, there is a very strong culture of reliability and dutifulness to the infrastructure and the services we provide to our customers every day. That's a highlight of the culture. But sometimes this word transformation and the way you play on those words with transformation, modernization, I think the reality is those get used interchangeably on PowerPoint slides all the time, and it's never quite exactly sure what people are saying or meaning when they say it. But when I think about transformation, I do think about a cultural change. And when I think about that word culture, I think about it as the verb, the definition of the word. I'm going to, for example, in a petri dish, culture some bacteria. And what has to be there for that to happen? The right conditions, there's media there. And as that culture grows, you see something flourish in that petri dish. And the reality is that in these environments, many times what's happening is big change is needed. You're actually pretty precise about the change that needs to occur. The change in the way we work, the change in the technology, maybe even the change in some of the environments that we intend to do business in. But you've got to change some of the environmental conditions to be able to get there. And you need to be able to celebrate your past. You need to be able to rely on your strengths. But at the same time, people can be pretty willful. They don't like change. Change is uncomfortable. And so you've got to come in with this clarity of mindset about where are we going, what are we doing, but where are we? And then help people navigate to that. And so that cultural change for us has probably been one of our bigger challenges. And it ranges the gamut from sometimes you got to assess the team. Do I have the right people with the right skills? Sometimes you have to go meet people right where they stand, get to know them, dig in deeply with them, understand their challenges. And one of the greatest cultural imperatives we've instilled into the team to help enable this change is there's only one cardinal sin around here, and that is the person hiding problems. We don't shoot messengers. We are a generative culture. If you will bring it up, we will support you and we will help find a solution together. And when you do that, you begin to unlock trust, you begin to unlock the power of the team, and you can begin to accomplish some pretty amazing things.
Sounds very interesting. So I just want to stick with this concept because, again, it's so thematic. We've heard about it all day, but really, how do you really drive a cultural change to support broader business change? And Tom, you've spoken a little bit about moving from more of a B2B to more of a B2C. And I would imagine that as you're driving technology to affect that, people feel threatened, not like what you're saying. Change does not come easy to humans. So can you talk a little bit about how you've won the hearts and minds to get over that fear and really drive and pull through change people first?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Michael spoke about culture and trust, and those are hitting on some of the right topics. When I think of culture, I think of behaviors and norms and ways of working. And when you try to transition from being a traditional CIO of delivering technology to more of a transformative person driving change within the company, it's really important to win the hearts and minds, and it's really important to get that trust. And it's not just about trust; it's about empathy. It's about being approachable as well. So at Sysco, part of our said I don't like the word transformation, but I keep using it. Part of our transformation.
Dare you not to? It's pretty hard not to.
Yeah, exactly. Part of our transformation is a lot of automation in how we sell products, how we empower our customers, how we do our product assortment, how we extend our assortment. When you now have 80% customer placed orders, and your sales team is being predictively and prescriptively advised on next best actions or based on the propensity to buy, here's what you should sell. It sounds like my job is threatened. And that's a big part of what we had to navigate through. And it's really important to have that empathy. One of the things that I think is usually important is that we all go out in the field. We ride along with truck drivers. We sit with our sales team. I was in Birmingham, England last week, sitting in a call center doing, listening on, customers calling, prospects and complaints and everything in between. And when they feel like you've got their best interests at heart and you understand, you're not just some person sitting in a, ivory tower and everything's great. You build that trust and that empathy, and then you have to constantly reinforce that we are not here to replace you. We are here to, hey, that Friday afternoon where you spent 4 hours every Friday afternoon doing pricing exceptions and planning your prospecting list for next week, you don't have to do that anymore because the computer does it for you. And oh, by the way, you have now 4 hours to do additional prospecting or to figure out how to, nurture that account more. And then you just repetition, you build that trust and you be present for them. So that's how you win their hearts and minds, and you do what you say you're going to do. You celebrate the victories, and you learn, and you iterate, and then before you know it, they just want more, and they want more, and then you've got to figure out the different question for another day is how do you say no and how do you prioritize. Mm-hmm. But that's a good problem to have. But the technology is the easy part. It's the culture, it's the trust, it's the change, it's the hearts and minds.
Great. So you and Michael are speaking about change, people-driven change within the firm. But Shadman, you think about the client first. So can you talk a little bit about what you shared about zero-hop culture and how you have really changed the approach with the customer's interest in mind?
Sure, of course. Thank you. So you mentioned, Cathy, zero-hop culture. So in any large organization that any one of us may operate, we have many hops between a customer's experience to when we do something about them. So think of like a customer complaint. When they are a department that sort of collects all the complaints together. Then somebody who does data analytics and themes that comes out of it, of what are the kind of complaint. That's another hop. And then somebody puts those as business cases. And then that's another hop. And then budget gets approved. And then, lo and behold, sooner or later, we get to doing something many months later than what somebody had as a pain point today and Tuesday afternoon. So one of the things we used, and again, technology was an enabler, was to get to a mindset of instantaneous, real-time reaction to the pain points in the marketplace that customers may have. It's typically in the past was hard to do because as a company like Citi, at any given moment in time, we may be receiving millions of phone calls, interactions with different customers. So humanly, it required that kind of multiple hops. So we created a concept of a zero-hop culture, where we dedicated a small team. We utilized AI to actually do a real-time listening of every single touch point that's coming into Citi. Analyze that to around 500 or so specific things we do for our customers on a given day basis. AI would judge each one of the interaction on a scale of good to bad, and then assign that as a specific interaction to say, today this customer is having this issue, and these many customers are having same kind of issue right now out of this 500-600 things that you do for the business. If you have an extra dollar available today, where can you spend to have the maximum impact for your customer satisfaction? And we assigned a small team. It's not like completely comprehensive of every single issue, but we assigned a small dedicated team that will take that analysis in real time and say, if I fix this issue, I'll handle 700 customers today and resolve that impact for them. And that became this is the zero hop. So customer had the pain point, AI in the middle, and a dedicated team, not just technology team, it's like governance, product management, operations, to solve something for them the same day. We started to do around it was like 4 or 5 a day. But that resulted in a historical reduction in our complaints over a year. Never in our recorded history. We had that, unfortunately can't give the exact number out, but we have never, ever seen a reduction in our complaint volumes at this level. And this came out of the idea of focusing on the customer, technology. I mean, you could say it's like a technology became enabled now, but it was really not technology looking for a solution.
Right.
It was a problem and it just enabled it. But the focus was how to solve that in real time. Taking those steps out in the middle made what I would call not an incremental change, but truly a step function. So that's
I mean, I think a huge insight. It's not about the technology, but it's about listening to the purpose and the goal and then getting there more quickly. So I think those are great examples of how people are, a part of what needs to be addressed culturally and everything. But culture and people change is not the only thing that you need to do to drive successful change programs. It's lots of other things. So Barry, I get to pick on you now because you work with lots of different companies and you see those cultures. But what are some other things that companies do to be successful in driving large change programs?
Yeah, thanks, Cathy. I think that Michael kind of talked about this a little bit, is understanding the current state and understanding it with some openness to solve those problems. Don't shoot the messenger, and let's solve it together. And when I think about the organizations that are really successful in driving change and understanding their current state, I think they understand it in a dimension and a depth that separates them from others. So what do I mean by that, right? So they're looking at things, technically, operationally, financially, and really getting detailed into what the current state is. Like, what is my tech deck really look like? Like, what systems, what operating systems, what legacy infrastructure do I have, and what applications are running on those things that I can make actionable change? It's really important to understand that, so you know what stakeholders to talk to and not talk to, and even operationally, like, where are the pain points? Is it a service level challenge that we're trying to address? Is it things take too long challenge to address? Is it things just cost too much money and somebody's looking to reduce cost, and how does that intersect into your relationships with your third parties, and where might you have commercial risk or commercial opportunity? So really understanding the current state is just so important, so you know what problem you're trying to solve. And then you can start to think about the metrics or the KPIs or the success factors that you're going to measure yourself against. And those two things should be very much linked, right? If I know I have 70% tech debt in a year, I'm going to have something less than, and I'm going to focus in these areas. And when it comes time to get money to drive those transformation efforts, I think it's really important to link the current state, the visibility and the knowledge that you've gained of these challenges, the targeted state, so you can make that case for the dollars, for the investment, for the resources, and then have a programmatic way of tracking it to make sure that you're achieving those objectives. And sometimes you have to switch strategies as things go along. So really important to know where you're coming from so you know where you're going.
Makes sense. So, thank you. Let's just take a step back now. So, where do you start? Where let's say it's where, what are what is the outcome? What is the problem to solve? There's probably more than you can choose, and this is for anyone. What your reaction would be? How and where do you start? Choose the priority, determine the goal, get buy-in, etc. We'll kind of go through this change process chronologically. So we'll start at the beginning. What's a good way to start?
Jump in. I'm reminded recently we had a leadership meeting with Charlie, our CEO, and somebody had asked him the question about has the job turned out to be what you expected it to be, and his response to that was, well, when you're interviewing for a job that both parties are putting their best foot forward and they're letting you know there are some problems here, but you don't realize until after you get in that those problems were a little worse than they were letting on.
Yeah.
And so the reality is, any of these roles you take, usually you're coming into an environment where change is needed. There is something wrong that needs fixing, but you aren't yet quite sure what that is. And the absolute worst thing you could do coming into that environment would be coming in from the point of view and the perspective that you're the savior, you have all the answers, you've done this before, listen to me and get out of the way and we're going to solve this. If you will just back off a little bit and give it 90 days and understand the priorities in the context of what your leadership has told you, but also what your team is telling you. And you'll just roll your sleeves up and get to work with them a little bit on the day-to-day. I loved what Tom said about sitting and listening to call center calls. I mean, going and spending time and hearing the customer and spending time with them in the trenches to really understand what their pain points are, to remove the friction. For me, my customers are ultimately developers like your team. And I think about it the exact same way. I've got to remove all these hops they go through to get to the outcome. Everybody wants it simple and they want it now. We understand that. But to understand why that's not happening takes time, and you have to go build that trust, and you have to dig deep and understand those issues at the atomic level with the frontline teams. If you try to do that from the top side with platitudes, and you try to do that with catchy initiatives and budget analysis, you're not going to get there.
Look before you leap. How about, someone talked about in a prior panel, getting CEO and CFO and CIO or CIDO alignment. Any suggestions on how to build, whether it's board level support or chief executive support, things that have worked?
Sure, I'll go first. Back to the where do you start to, I'll tie the two together a little bit, but what we all need to figure out is what's the most important thing or things that you're trying to accomplish. And if you think about a food distribution company, or a little bit of what you know about me and us, it's actually something called cost per piece, okay? And most of you probably don't know what that means, but raising revenue or profit. So now I've got the CEO, the CFO, and the CIDO all paying attention now because I said revenue and profit, okay? And cost per piece is a metric that Wall Street keeps us accountable for what does it cost from end to, or from beginning to end, from pick all the way to delivery to the customer. We call it a piece because every box, whether it's a box of tomatoes or steaks or whatever it is, that piece has a cost associated with it, picking, shipping it, et cetera. So if cost per piece is what Wall Street's measuring us on, which they are, you got inflationary situations, alignment to the question of CEO, CFO, what can I do, what can the team do to improve cost per piece? So that begs a whole bunch of questions around warehousing, pick, pack, and ship automation, telematics and routing technology on a truck, how you get more predictive and prescriptive and what you pick and how you do it. And there's lots of change, and I'll tell you a story a little bit later about that as well. But we've spent a lot of time prioritizing what will move the needle most. And it comes down to your normal cost benefit, time to deliver, what moves the needle. Is a robot in a warehouse a better investment than redoing your warehouse floor or investing in telematics and things like that? So again, it gets back to listening, observing, what do we need to solve the business, aligning on the financial metrics, what do you need to do, and having some good conversations. And if we're not sitting at the table having those, you risk doing something that isn't aligned with the top priorities. But my number one job, amongst the other 10 that are a close second, are reduce cost per piece.
I would say the following. So I think, so first of all, where we start. I think you kind of have to do two things. One is a broad vision, but the execution starts very small. It's very important. My experience has, and let me actually switch the topic from transformation to use like change management. Like I think that's probably a broader topic in a certain way. So rolling out any change in a large organization. The first thing, key to success in my view, is it's simple and small. That builds the momentum builder. So there could be also simple things that are not momentum builders. The way I sort of find those things is actually go in an organization and talk to a lot of folks and ask them basically two key questions. Question one, what are your top 2 pain points that is bothering you? Not like your biggest strategic issue, that are your ankle biters. They're not like the things you're fighting, the dragon that you're fighting, but the things that are annoying the heck out of you every day. Okay, so they're little things. By definition, they become little things, but they annoy you a lot. And the second question I asked them is like, who are the 2 other people you want me to talk to in the organization? The second question helps me build the social network of the company, of who matters who and those kind of things. And the first question say, where are the top annoyances are in the organization? Annoyances are important as opposed to strategic because those are easy to solve. If you start with the big strategic thing, I guarantee you now how incredible your plan might be. There'll be some white blood cells in any organization that will come out and attack you as a foreign body that's trying to change something, and you'll be dealing with that for a long time. But if there are small annoyances, most people will get around to it. I had a simple example in one of the companies I was working with. Everybody was super annoyed how the expense reports were approved. It required like 4 different funny approvals, some silly thing, how the process worked. It was not against anybody's strategic vision, so nobody got annoyed fixing it. But everybody find it annoying because it was like an annoyance. But when you fix that rolled up into a momentum of a group of people who are changing for the better. And the theme was just making the company simpler and more efficient. So not like, we're going to be all cloud this or we are all AI that. A simple platform that everybody can line up on. 3 or 4 or 5 small things to fix. Then you can take that platform for a broader vision that you go talk to CEO and CIO. Because then when they go and talk, because whoever it is, CEO or board, they also go and check their own networks. And if you've already built a little bit of a momentum, not just your presentation, but the rest of the organization say, oh yeah, that group, that simplification thing, yeah, that's fantastic. They took care of my expense report. It used to be so annoying, and now it's like quick. And then you get this double momentum, and the change starts to roll on its own.
The term goodwill comes to mind.
The goodwill comes, that's a good way to say it, yeah.
Goodwill and build momentum through little seemingly insignificant or minor things. I think that's a really great insight. And just a heads up to the audience here and anyone joining live stream, I am gonna come to you guys for questions in a bit, but I just wanna flip the script a little and ask you guys this question. So you heard me say that only 20% of successful POCs ever make it to live date, which suggests there's a lot of mistakes to be made and failure. What comes to mind for you? And it could be a quick answer, but just so the audience can understand, we just heard for about 25, 30 minutes what works well and what's been successful. Now, what do we need to be watching for, and what are some of the mistakes to avoid? Because there's nothing better than learning from someone else's mistakes, not making them yourself. And again, that's for anyone who wants to jump in.
I'll jump in again.
Yeah.
I think the one that always comes to mind where I've watched very successful, large-scale, transformative activity, and that could be in the sense of culture or technology, is the failure to count the cost. I've seen time and time again where the initial framing of what it is we're trying to transform or change is dramatically underestimated in terms of the complexity that's involved with truly getting to the outcome that you're looking for, the business benefit. One such example I'm thinking of, I won't name the company, but it was a call center transformation. And what ultimately had happened that was dramatically underestimated was the amount of investment that had to be made in all of the underlying infrastructure from a telecom and network standpoint, and the amount of development work that had to go into the workflow for the call center agent. And really the only cost that had been counted was the simplification of the Avaya environment. And so what you begin to discover very quickly through that transformation were funding issues, people and talent issues. Back to the point about the momentum, because people aren't getting to outcomes, they start underperforming and leaving, and you aren't getting that snowball effect so that you are beginning the traction you're looking for as you roll this out across the globe. And then I think I heard it in a previous panel, they were talking about these initiatives, if they go on much longer than about 18 months, 12 to 18 months, they stop to become interesting to the board and to the executive committee. And so they start getting defunded and deprioritized. And now you don't get to the outcomes you were looking for. And your state, after that, is actually worse than
you're
it
in a
was
worse
before
place.
you started. Because now you've got even more heterogeneity in your environment.
Yeah. Can I add two quick stories very, very quickly? We all know lots of things can go wrong for lots of reasons. One of my personal pet peeves is teams get complacent because you hear, well, we're 50% done, or we're 75% done, and it's got a yellow dot next to it, or a green dot, everything's good, don't look behind the curtain. I don't care that you're 50% done or 75% done. I want to know that you're 100% done to pace or to plan. It's a pacing discussion, because what happens is you get this comfort level and you think everything's good, and then all of a sudden you wake up someday and you're out of time. Well, you told me you were 50% done. What you didn't tell me is you're 80% to plan, which means you're 20% behind schedule. So there's just a degree of rigor where we as leaders probably need to pay a little more attention. And then one other quick story is I think sometimes we pay attention to the wrong stakeholders. And Jeffrey Moore wrote a book called Crossing the Chasm about 30 years ago. And I don't know who's read it, but long story short, it approximates your audience in a bell curve. And on the one side of the bell curve are your innovators, and then you've got like your fast followers. And then on the other side of the bell curve, you have your laggards. And then there's this big middle majority. And we spend all of our time on the extremes, right? The people that are the innovators and the early adopters, we like them. They're our friends. Well, we don't need to spend as much time with them. They're our change agents, so. And then we spend all our time on the other extreme because we don't like them and we want to win and we want them to see the light, right? Well, you're probably never gonna win them over, so just contain them. Where we need to spend our time is the influencers in the middle, and close that chasm and kind of pull those people over. So probably a lot of my time, as well as all of ours, is stakeholder management. And we spend time with the wrong stakeholders.
Talking to the people who you want to hear what they have to say versus the people who really, I see Shadman nodding too. So anything come to mind, Barry, from your experience in terms of?
Yeah, the conversation makes me think about risk and risk management. And what I would like to see more of our customers doing, and just all change agents, is embracing risk a little bit more. I think it could be a powerful tool and a really healthy exercise, which can unleash not just creativity, but maybe even a mechanism to prioritize things or fund things that normally might not be addressed. So something that comes to mind for me is Southwest and some of the challenges that they've had. Everybody's probably familiar with that. It's like, well, if somebody did an exercise and quantified the risk and they said, oh man, we should have probably fixed that problem instead of waiting for the $1 billion loss that happened in one day, that might have been a good risk conversation to have. So, how do you use that risk management process to step away from the standard, I'll say, cadence of risk register and ranking, but like drive it from a perspective of like, this is how I'm going to get things done. I'm going to prioritize, get folks accountable, and use it as a way to drive change. And even with like change program within a change program, like just making sure that you have the right resources to move and keep pace. As Tom said, I love that. I'm going to steal that one. And make sure you have an accurate representation of what those risks are.
So definitely not hiding from it or, talking to the folks who don't want to talk about it. And for me, when I think about the jobs you do every day, how are you supposed to see around a corner? It's cute when you say it, but really, how do you know, the unknown? How do you plan for risk when it's not identified? The first part of it is identify it, embrace it, quantify it, don't run from it. But any thoughts or experiences on how to scan for the risk and the unknown so that you can maybe have a plan B or...
Yeah, maybe let me take that one
Yeah,
first.
sure.
So we have this term around planning for the unplanned, which really is that there are obviously known set of risks that we all plan our businesses. Come from a banking background, right? So risk management is one of the core areas of focus. I mean, and there you have the whole discipline around sort of extremely unlikely, sort of black swan events all the way down to things that you expect 50-50 chance. However, in things like even in black swan events are by definition you will not be able to plan for all of them because they are black swan. You don't even think about that could potentially happen. So a couple of things that we do on that front. So not to sort of undermine the standard risk management process that is very thoughtful around all the way from extremely unlikely, which is 1 in 100 million, to 50% chance of recession or something like that, right? So we handle all of those. But I think there are a few other elements that we think about. So one is in this concept of planning for the unplanned. We have found over time it is not good to be 100% efficient in an organization. And what I mean by that is that you need to, by your organization, figure out that a portion of your organization needs to be aligned to doing things that are strategic but not urgent. So when urgent but not strategic risk comes up, you can easily move them around without drastically devastating your plans. And I hate to say it maybe in a CIO symposium, but sometimes actually some of the tech debt efforts fall for me that way, that I'll take 10% of the organization, align it to that. They are actively working on it. And no matter what happens, I will not let those people off that. So there's a dedicated capacity. But I know that if, God forbid, something like COVID happens, which is what happened, this is a scenario I'm actually reciting from, I will have, without drastically altering all the other plans, I'll be able to adjust a sizable size of my capacity and react to some very incredibly unexpected set of changes in the business and still be okay. And we did that during the COVID time, for example. So that was one of the biggest lessons, that you cannot plan for everything, even when you're thinking you're formally planning for black swan event. The second, two things. That's right, emergency. Hang on 1 second.
Systems down.
Yeah, exactly.
Not right now.
The other two things is we realize that most of the time emergencies that you can't see around the corner do not happen in a discipline. They happen at the seams of the discipline. So most of us are really good in our discipline. Marketing and marketing, finance and finance, technology and technology. What we organizations don't carefully look at is where marketing meets technology, where operations meet legal, or those seams gets missed. So we actually in our planning have started to put a lot, and we coined this term called boundaryless leadership. Whereas leadership where I specifically worry about, and my colleagues, not about my discipline, of course I worry about it every day, but like in this exercise, but worry about where we are meeting the other. So I'm a little bit into getting somebody else's lane, or somebody else is getting into my lane, because those are the seams that gets missed. That's where risks emerge most of it. It's things break at the seams, not in the middle.
Yeah, that's good.
So we have that concept, which is I feel like very important. And the last, which is probably very simple, and everybody would say that, but having the point that we started with, as we were saying, what is transformation, is that getting into the organization, the mindset of continuous change and nimbleness. So when an unexpected things happen, people are not, oh my God, my BAU changes now. This is a state of affairs generally. They have learned to be thrown with sort of unknowns, and they sort of deal with that. And that's more than anything else is the best exercise to be prepared for risks.
Can I offer a quick practical tip for everybody and include my pacing? When we're tracking risk, it's not just adding 15% to your budget and schedule. We explicitly ask everybody to list your risks, your issues, and your escalations. They're all different. Risks happen. If not mitigated, they become issues. Issues, if you can't solve them, you ask for help. Escalations. We explicitly ask our team to separate out the three. It forces the thinking, it forces the conversation, it creates a safe and transparent culture where you can inventory and think about these things. What's the business impact of that risk? What's the likelihood of it occurring? And what's your ability to detect? So it's part of our conversation.
Language, exactly. I think that's very helpful, and I'm glad we talked about risk at this conference and brought that forward. How about any questions from the audience? Anything that we didn't address or you want to click deeper on? Do we have one in the front row? I'm just so everybody can hear. We'll wait for a mic.
So one of the things that we're tasked with as transformation leaders is to find new and innovative opportunities. And so sometimes we are going into uncharted territory, and we have to find a way to build sort of metrics, analyze risk. How far do we go into this territory? How far do we go with this idea or concept before we either continue to push harder and further, or say, well, maybe I'm going down the wrong path. Maybe there's nothing really here, no opportunity here. So any of you, could you share with us maybe some of your best strategies when someone is going into uncharted territory and you're trying to build some type of metrics and risk resilience and tolerance levels?
Sure, I'll start. I think it was Tom who made the point about reserve capacity. I think at some level in your organization, you have to make sure there's this reserve capacity for innovative thinking and work to be done. And as a function of that, it's real important to have a process, more or less. It doesn't have to be institutionalized, but a process people go through in terms of bringing new innovations in. Because what you can find is that you can have really just a tremendous amount of expense and capital chewed up in things that really don't end up delivering business value and outcomes that improve the overall state of the business. And so for us, very pragmatically, the process we go through is first identifying what specifically in our product journeys, we look at our product maps, and we've worked with the business upstream to say, this is the journey you go through to get our product, and we're very intentional and clear about what all those products are. And then we're looking along that value stream map of how do I solve different problems on that value stream map to bring innovation and to bring new capability that really changes the game they didn't have before. And as we do that, that begins to give us a slate of partners. We can begin to think about who may be in those spaces. Oftentimes, these are very nascent technologies. They have a feature, but they're not scalable. Or there's a feature, but it doesn't have the right security. And the path we take is we find ways to use them at a very small scale, and then we partner with that partner over a long period of time, sometimes both at the corporate level with actual investment in the firm, but also as a key partner to us to develop and mature their product roadmap and get it to the place it needs to be so that we can consume it in earnest.
I'll give one quick train of thought on that is that so there are different ways of probably looking at also innovation. We generally found it more productive. So there's an inside-out innovation and outside-in innovation. So inside out, you find key capabilities and you figure out how to bring it out to the market. We have found, to your point, a higher success rate when we start from outside in. And we're looking for where the pain points are, not even the ones that customer may be aware of, but just observing behavior and customer assessment, how people sort of consumer behavior and the trends in the marketplace, and use that to find out the areas we need to innovate in. And then we'll directly go. Because usually then what happens, if we find a solution, we kind of already know there's a market for it. So it actually starts to become profitable by design. But it does take us away from certain things which may be farther out and may not be hard to sort of gauge as a consumer behavior. However, most of the things that you try are more successful. That gives us then a credibility and trust to try out sometimes far out kind of things.
I'll just add one thing, and I see we have the question there. A lot of our customers grapple with the innovator's dilemma. It's like, do I do it now or do I wait a version and I get so much more capabilities, but I have to wait a long time? So that really comes to play. It's like, well, what's the risk? What's the reward? And I think, kind of what Michael said, it's like find the pocket that it works, where you can invest in, and maybe that becomes your innovation bed, maybe a greenfield type of deployment, and then you can kind of see how you can move forward the best way once the technology catches up and with the innovation.
Fail fast, find a way to get your partners and your ecosystem skin in the game, co-innovate, intellectual property sharing, early adopters. The more incented they are to help you, the more likely you are to be successful.
Was there another question in the room? Okay.
So I was wondering, as you guys are transforming your organization to new business models, modernization, agile product model, one of the things I struggling is about the financial allocation on technology and relating it with the value, especially for executive and board members and things like that, and actually simplifying the whole budgeting process in a real sense. How you guys have been thinking about it or have made any progress on that dimension?
I'll go first real quickly. It's a struggle. It's a challenge. I've got a budget review this week and I'm still trying to figure it out. And our transformation is actually costing more money. And we're driving more growth, of course. But the CEO keeps saying, Tom, you need to self-fund this. And I keep saying, well, our percentage of revenue is still in line. Our budget's going up. And no, you need to stay flat. You need to self-fund it. It's a perpetual argument. But one of my tactics is, if you think back to economics class in college, we're driving price per unit down, but we're buying more quantity, if you will. And if you can drive price per unit down, in a way, you are self-funding a lot of this stuff. And if you can shut down legacy technology to self-fund it, so costs may be going up, but if your percentage of revenue or your cost per service desk ticket or your cost per line of code or your cost per widget is going down, that's just one way to spin the story, of course. But you can be the best technology leaders, but if you don't have financial acumen, you can't spin a financial story, you won't be successful. So how do you guys do it?
I'll throw in one quick one and tie it to the cultural change. What I've found is that oftentimes the business cases that are being put around these and taken to the board have very short-sighted, myopic views of the timeline. And they're not really, back to my earlier comment about counting the full cost, I've really forced a cultural change in the team that you are not allowed to bring this forward unless you've taken a full 5-year pro forma view on how this impacts the budget and exactly where the savings and the benefits start to come in. Because oftentimes those savings start getting counted on month 1 and it's like, you haven't actually even done anything yet. How are you saving money?
Fair point. Well, I realize, I think, oh, there's another question in the audience. Great.
Hi, I think I'm an add-on to that question, but specifically, how do you say no and make no okay? And also the process for pulling the plug when there is sunk cost. So we talk a lot about digital transformation getting defunded and things like that more from an outsider perspective. But how do you manage your budget internally, saying no to those things? You talk about failing fast, for example. But like, what are those criteria and what does that communication process look like? And how did you get your team to be okay with that process?
Well,
Give one quick.
go ahead.
So I think somebody said a while ago, I won't name no, but that excellence comes from focus, and focus comes from ability to say no. The approach we have taken is that we preemptively have defined, so in my case, we have like 8 pillars defined. These are the areas we want to invest most of our investment in. And if they're not aligned, they cover almost every aspect of the company. But like if it's not aligned to certain requests to that, that generally is at the bottom of the pile. And we are very open to that. So we don't hurt people's feelings because we talk about it. Most important thing is talk about it on an incredibly regular basis. Well, let me give you a sense what I mean by that. Most people probably at my level have town halls once every 6 months or so. I hold these every week with thousands of folks. And I talk to them about our priorities and why not to sort of focus on the other things. And people outside technology invited to those as well. So generally we push them out even without that happening, but it requires a lot of communications on one hand and establishment preemptively around your top priorities. So people typically don't bring it, and when they do bring it, when you say no to them, you don't annoy everybody about it.
We say no, but. No, but I can move you to the front of the line if you improve your business case, and let me show you how to do that. No, seriously, you say it a little softer than that, but that's what you do.
Yeah, we have a simple above the line, below the line process. And so everybody comes with the same set of information for the initiative. They're very clear about the strategic pillars that we're focused on. Each of these initiatives are weighed in light of prioritization against that pillar. And then, at the end of the day, you're trying to reconcile how many heads do I have available to do this work with how much budget is available. And then it's just that simple process and discipline of saying, this is where the line is. We can get more funding and we can pull some things above that line. We can perform trade-offs if prioritization changes. Or if we, to your point, if we find that through the MVP process and we're trying to fail fast by adopting agile ways of working, we'll kill it quick if it's just not going to work for us.
Thanks, guys. So I started by saying our goal was to give the audience here and live actionable insights, and I think you over-delivered. You guys had some really great advice, so thank you all, and we'll see you next panel.
Thank you, Cathy.